Hi, my name is Thomas Johnson, and I'm the founder and CEO of GetUpNGetFit, Wellness and Fitness Coaching Concierge. I'm also a C-suite advisor and investor. You're listening to How May I Serve You, where I'm constantly on the quest to surround myself with the best coaches while learning how to better serve our executive clientele by asking them, how may I serve you? And today's guest is Sam. Sam, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Thomas. Thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Great, great. So Sam Leibowitz, known as the Conscious Consultant, is a mentor, coach, speaker, healer, and serial entrepreneur and author of the #1 best-selling book, Everyday Awakening. He has been in business since 1993 and has owned several successful businesses. His current ventures include Talking Alternative Broadcasting and Double Diamond Wellness in New York City. Sam has lectured in several venues in Manhattan, including being a featured speaker at TEDx Upper West Side. This is 2016, right, Sam?
Yep, it was in 2016.
Nice, 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 nice. All right. So Sam, I'm gonna ask you a few questions, man. Let's dive into it. Um,
Sure, shoot.
so before we even get started, right? I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. The 2-minute version, though.
um, 2 minutes is tough because I've had so much experience built up over the years. But let's just say I started off early in life on kind of a very spiritual path that I that went kind of not so good. So I got very far away from it and became an entrepreneur. Started off in IT and doing computer work, and then got into entertainment and then into aerospace and then real estate. And then
Wow.
I really I like to say the universe will have its way with us, whether we want it to or not. And so it kind of nudged me back into this path of greater consciousness and awareness.
Okay.
Through actually, I took a whole bunch of healing seminars, not because I ever intended to become a healer. Like totally furthest thing from my mind. It was more for my own healing because I knew I had a lot of emotional scars from my previous experience. And then there was that one seminar where they teach you a method, they pair you up, and I helped this woman to release a condition she had since she was 6 years old. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do with this? I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. What do you do with this? And so I sat with it for a while, and the idea came to me, well, you're still kind of an entrepreneur and a consultant. You're just a different kind now. My focus is different. So when I work with people, I work on what's really the underlying thing. What's the underlying pattern in the person's life, in their energy, their attitude, that when we shift that, it doesn't just shift it around one particular problem, but it shifts it in their whole life. And I've had many clients who I've worked with where, they primarily came to me because they had some struggle in their career, in their business. But once we worked together, not only did they get past that, but their personal lives got better, their relationships got better, other things in their life got better all around.
Nice, nice. Wow, first of all, your resume is pretty impressive and vast. So that's pretty awesome. But Sam, I want you to tell us, why did you get into coaching in the first place? And who do you coach?
Well, it actually is kind of funny. I didn't really intend on getting into coaching either. I started with, I was teaching sort of a how do you start your own business class.
Okay.
For people who were either college students, graduate students, or maybe they were employees for a number of years. And now they wanted to strike off on their own. And so I just kind of took sort of the lessons I learned from my years of getting involved with businesses and started teaching this class. And then what I found was people wanted to hear my own story, and they'd come up with me after the class and hey, I want to start this business. Would you help me? Would you mentor me on this? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Why not? And so it happened again and again and again. And so then I just started. And I don't like using the word coach because there are a lot of people out there who got some coaching certificate and they're coaching people, but they don't have really much life experience. I really look at myself more as a mentor and an advisor because I have all these years. I can't believe it. It's like over 27 years of experience. And so I use my real world experience to also help and advise them, not just ask questions and not just help them to come up with the solutions, but really support them using everything.
Okay, so over the years, you have basically accumulated all these experiences and skills, and you're leveraging your experience and skills to mentor your clientele.
Exactly.
Great, great.
A- And again, what happens is the people who come to me, they've tried like all the usual ways. They're stuck in some area of their business, and they tried all the usual ways and nothing's quite working. And then they come to me and we take a different approach. I look at what's really going on here. What's the pattern? Because usually, if we're coming across some big challenge in our life, it's something we've met before, but maybe in smaller ways. So I
Understood.
look at what's the pattern, where did it come from, and then what do we need to do to shift that for the person so that they feel empowered, that they understand like they are creators, they know what to do. We just have to uncover it a little bit.
No, Sam, your approach is kind of similar to mine. I'm in the wellness industry, right? So
Hmm.
what do we do? What we normally do when we assess our clientele, we find out, we do research, and we find out about patterns and behavior. I'm big when it comes to behavior science. Then we reverse engineer and create actionable steps. So it seems like you have like a similar structure.
Yeah, probably. Though I hazard a guess that I take slightly more intuitive approach than you do.
Okay.
Because lots of times I will just know the right question to ask or the right area to look on that actually works out to be where the issue is. Like I had this one client who was struggling with his manager at his job, and I just kind of got this feeling. And I was like, so tell me, like the way he's acting, was there anybody else in your life who's kind of been like that? Like when you were a kid? And all of a sudden he looks at me with these big eyes and goes, "Oh my God, yeah, he's just like my dad." Because I had a feeling it was
Okay.
probably something to do with his dad. So then we worked on the whole issue around his relationship with his dad. And once that shifted, then the relationship with his manager shifted as well.
Wow. Wow. So, but it seems that you're also very intuitive.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that taking all these like healing workshops and seminars, and I'm a Reiki master and I do a couple of different healing modalities, but the way it really helps me is to feel into what's the energy around something, and then when I can kind of like intuitively kind of feel that energy, then it gives me the breadcrumbs to go, oh, okay, now what about this and what about that and what about that, and I ask just a couple of key questions that then brings us to where the real challenge is, not the surface apparent challenge, because it's always a few levels deeper than that. We tend to think what's right in front of us is our real challenge, but it's usually not.
Yeah.
It's something much more internal, much deeper. And I guess I'm kind of like an archaeologist, kind of excavating
Digging, right? Digging.
what's really underneath there.
Yeah. I love that analogy of being an archaeologist, digging, trying to get to the root source. And at the end of the day, we can't heal ourselves. We can't progress in life until coming to terms with the root source of the problem. And
Right.
I love the fact that you're really approaching um, that. You're looking for the root source, opposed to just looking from the outside and being on surface level, like the surface level. So that's great right there. I like that.
Right, because so much of society today, the way our medical system works, the way so many of our educational system, it's very kind of surface oriented. It's very symptomatic oriented.
Yeah,
But the symptom isn't really the problem. The symptom is just letting us know that there's something we need to check on, that there's something to deal with. So if we don't get hung up on the symptom, but we look for what's underneath the symptom, that's where the real gold is. That's where the real evolution is.
there you
And
go.
so, and it's not like you ever get done. A friend of mine calls it, it's like the never ending PhD work of personal development, of individual development, let me call it. because there's always something more to work on. It doesn't mean we're broken. It doesn't mean we need to be fixed. It's just to be a more actualized human being. It's like polishing a fine stone that we
Mhm.
can get it smoother and smoother and smoother the more we work on it. And sometimes we may not want to work on it, and that's okay. But there's always something more that we can come to with it that empowers us to do even greater things with our life.
I agree with you. I agree with you. So, with that being said, Sam, who is your ideal clientele? Or do you work with mid management, entrepreneurs, executives? Who is your ideal clientele?
I work a lot with solopreneurs, small business owners,
Okay.
entrepreneurs. I also work with professionals. I do work with some sweet C-suite people. I do have, early in life before I became an entrepreneur, I did work for corporations and for a nonprofit. But really, the people who love me and and who really resonate with me are sort of those independent-minded thinkers who want to do something different, and they tend to be a little more open to a different way of approaching situations. So
Mhm.
those kinds of creative entrepreneurs and solopreneurs who just know like there's something more that they can do, and they just feel stuck in some way, and I help to unstick them.
Okay. Okay. So, Sam, like you and I both know that there are so many different coaches out there, and this is why, when you first enter the conversation, you mentioned, I don't like calling myself a coach. I like to call myself a mentor.
Right.
So, how would you describe your coaching style?
How would I describe my coaching style? That's a good question. I mean, it's very personal and individualistic to the person I'm working with, because I try and meet the person where they're at and
Okay.
find a way to support them. I'm not the kind of person who believes that you always have to have a coach or mentor, though it is very helpful to have someone on the outside who can look at things dispassionately. Um, However, I'm a big believer in empowerment. I'm
Okay.
looking to empower my clients to understand how powerful they are, how resourceful, how many resources they have. And I use, I guess, kind of things, I call it ancient wisdom, but applying it in a very modern situation. So I use very eclectic techniques and eclectic points of view and perspectives to help my clientele really shift how they're even seeing the situation. Not just the situation itself, but their whole perspective and the way they approach and they enter into the situation. So I'm very eclectic and but very practical minded. One of my skills I learned early on that I'm good at that I never really realized was being able to take these esoteric concepts and these high things and translate them down into plain language, so it's very approachable and very practical.
Okay.
I like being practical, but I also understand that these ancient wisdom can really serve us in modern times.
Understood. Yeah. Being practical is definitely helpful, especially. I mean, it's all about getting your point across, right, and finding the right way to get your point across, so that client could learn it, embody it, and then take the action. So that's the goal
What
right
you
there.
said right there is so key. It's embodying it. I don't care if they get it or not, because sometimes we tend to put too much focus on the mind. But we're not just a mind, we're a body, we have a heart, we have a spirit. And so sometimes I want to get to that more subtle, spiritual, energetic side of the person, so that we make a shift that then flows through everything else, that the mind goes, wait a minute, what happened? Wait, like all of a sudden things shifted and changed. So sometimes I'm not even worried about them getting it, I'm worried about them being it.
Being it.
And if I can get through to somebody's soul, and or their energetic side of their being, and they shift without even realizing it, then I've done my job.
Sam, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. How can you embody it if you don't get it? I'm just curious. I'm just trying to wrap my mind around this. How can you get something How can you embody something without getting it first?
Do you play any sports?
I used to play rugby. I ran track. I played football in high school. Yeah, so
Okay, let's just take rugby for a minute. When you played rugby, okay, you had to learn the rules of the game, but when did you get good at it?
when I was in flow.
Yeah.
You're right.
So when you were in the flow, were you thinking about every little move you were making?
I was not. I was just I was in
You
flow.
were you were embodying it.
Got
It
you.
was
Okay.
in your body. Brain got bypassed. The body is so intelligent. So we don't always have to get things to shift and change. Doesn't mean I don't give my clients homework and practices and processes to go through. But the point is you do the process enough to get it in your body, then you leave it behind, and now you're embodying it, and it's not always about understanding it. I mean, oftentimes I say to people, don't believe a word I say. Just test it out and see if it works. And if it works, great, use it. And if it doesn't, leave it to the side. So even if they're skeptical of it and they don't really believe in it, if they just try it or we just make a shift and something happens, then we've made a much deeper change to who they are being in the moment or in the situation that then goes beyond just one particular situation. Because I don't want my clients coming back to me with the same thing, just different environment, different situations. No, you want to work on something, we work on it, we get it done, it's over. That never comes up unless there's something about it that we didn't work out. But let's move on to what's the next thing and what's the next thing, so that we're constantly evolving and growing and becoming more of who we really are and embodying more of it. So I'm not interested in the linear kind of changes.
Yeah.
I'm looking for
Okay.
exponential, out of the box ways of really leaping to new levels.
Understood. Got it. Okay. So if someone was looking for a coach, what
Mhm.
traits would you advise to look for? If you were to just stumble upon a person and they ask you, Sam, what traits would you recommend I look for?
So I'm a big believer, just because it's my own experience, is looking for someone who has real life experience, not just some coaching technique.
There
I
you
mean,
go.
don't get me wrong, these coaching techniques can be great. But when someone has real life experience that they've lived, then there's a way of relating to them and they understand you in a way that somebody who hasn't been through it can't really relate to you. So if you want to find a coach, you want someone who's supportive, who'll be there for you, who call you on your stuff when you're coming up with excuses, but somebody who has real world experience, not just some coaching credentials.
Nice,
And
nice.
somebody who has the experience that can relate to you, someone who's relatable.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, Sam. So, are you currently working on any new projects that you'd like to share with us?
Well, other than my book coming out, I'm very happy. We hit number one in like 3 different categories on Amazon, Everyday Awakening. I'll be doing an audio version of that book probably by the end of the year this year. But I am doing a lot of work with my podcasting network, talkradio.nyc, and I'm actually working with a woman who's a specialist in sponsorships, and we're
Okay.
coming up with a monetization class for people who do podcasts of how to actually make money at it and not just keep it as a nice hobby. But that'll be coming out probably in about 2 or 3 months.
Okay. So, Sam, where where can we find you if somebody were to inquire about these services and just anything you have going on? Where can they go to find you?
So my personal brand website is theconsciousconsultant.com. So all strung together, theconsciousconsultant.com. And you can find all about my services and my different offerings there. And then if people are interested, I do my own weekly show on Thursdays at noon Eastern time, and that's on talkradio.nyc. So you can also go there, and there's tons of episodes there and all kinds of information, and you can learn a lot about me there.
Sam, that's awesome. Definitely thanks for sharing that. and I'm sure my audience is going to follow through, and you'll definitely be getting some more new members following your show. So today's show is sponsored by Get Up and Get Fit. And Get Up and Get Fit will be providing students with textbooks and school supplies in Cambodia in honor of our guest today, Sam, as well as our philanthropic mission to impact at least 50,000 people per year. So last but not least, Sam, how may I serve you?
Well, you've done it already by just having me on your show and exposing me to your audience. And believe me, I really do appreciate it. I know it's no small thing. And I think it's beautiful the work you're doing in Cambodia. And it's so important to give back. So I really honor you for that. So I'm just very grateful just to be here with you today.
Thanks. Sam, thank you for coming through. And to our guests and listeners, come again, tune in every week. Go check out Sam. He's amazing. And as you already heard today, he's able to provide so much value to your life. So check him out. All right, guys, take care. Until next week.